Hello, Dave. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah.
Good, good. So, just tell us where we're talking to you from, please.
I'm in my flat in South London, Southeast London, near sort of in Brockley, and I'm working from home today. So yeah, we've been sat in my living room quite a lot over the last few months. Yeah.
Okay, like a number of us, absolutely. So, would you start off by introducing yourself? Talk about any work you want to do. Talk about any hobbies. A little sort of picture of yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. So I was at Aston for secondary school. I left Aston finished my A levels there in 2002. When I then went to study architecture at UCL at the Bartlett School of Architecture in London, where I've stayed in London ever since. I I run sort of one and a half, two companies. I run an architecture practice called Bat Studio, Between Art and Technology Studio, and a furniture building company called Milk Furniture. And I also spend about a day a week teaching architecture back at my old school. So I've got quite a variety of different activities going on during the week.
Okay. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, because you're an example. Not that I'm kind of pigeonholing people, but I've been speaking to your kind of alumni. Some who are in employment, some who are professional. But you're running your own company, so you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah. It wasn't really sort of planned that much. It sort of came about through circumstance. But I think the studying to become an architect takes ages, and lots of different things happen along the way. And one of them was I made a good friend called John Craig, who we used to meet at university, and we were flatmates for many years. And around about sort of 2012, we started doing sort of projects ourselves on the side. So we started doing little competitions to do build art installations and things at music festivals. And we did a few of those together, and then slowly we thought maybe it'd be more fun to run our own company rather than work for other people. So we incorporated Bat Studio around just about the end of 2012, and it's been our kind of, I guess, our primary income is probably the best way to put it. It's paid our livings for maybe the last 6 years or so, something like that.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
So from a careers perspective, I guess a message there could be where you end up, and I'm not suggesting you've ended up, but where you go on that journey isn't necessarily where you start from. So good
I mean, no, definitely not. I mean, I think that's one of the I guess there's a little bit of a bit of background to it. So the type of design work I've ended up working in isn't entirely conventional architecture. We do conventional architecture, but we also end up doing a lot of sort of art installation work, or we do interiors projects, which are very hands-on, much to do with fabricating work or different approaches to working. And we also collaborate a lot with a lot of other people from different backgrounds, different professions. So we have a kind of very I've worked with a lot of people who've come from a lot of very different places to end up working on the same projects together, right? So I think there's there's a lot to be said for both the fact that you never quite know where you're going to end up, but also you don't know. Someone who I used to work for called Jason Bruges, one of his favourite sayings was always something like, I don't know, 2/3 of the jobs that people who are just starting at university are going to do don't exist yet. It's that kind of extremely rapid situation where I don't know, someone I always think of when I was at say doing my A levels, studying graphic design was completely misunderstood, and I know it was sort of seen as something which would be kind of quite a high risk decision, and that there weren't many graphic designers out there, and what do graphic designers actually do. But now they're all extremely highly paid web developers and extremely interesting interaction designers, because it turned out that's what was about to happen in the world. So and no one was saying, no one knew that, and that was a tangent that sort of that particular strand of interest took in sort of the mid 2000s. So yeah, I think it's hard to know what you end up doing, but finding something you're good at is a good starting point, I think.
Okay, yeah, and again, some great. Before I ask you about your fondest memory of the Aston, there's just two great things for me which came out. One is a transferable skill, which I'll ask you about later. You alluded to it, collaboration, and the other one is about embracing uncertainty rather than being unsettled by it. Okay, then. So, what was your fondest memory, please, of your time at the Aston?
I'm not. I'm not sure about specific fondest memory. I studied. I studied drama and had a lot of fond memories of studying drama. That was a lot of fun to be had in down there, and yeah, and spent a lot of time playing drums in the. I don't know if it's still there. The back of the music hut still out the back or not, but I spent a lot of time in there as well, which is good.
Okay. Well, I have been onto site once before lockdown, but I was guided through the school with my guide up to the room where I was working. So I can't answer that, but I'm sure that the people watching will know, or will know of where you're talking about. Okay, so if we could turn our thoughts now to when you were leaving school and you were about to embark on your careers, what sort of thoughts were going through your mind?
I was always relatively sure that I wanted to go study architecture for quite a long time. So the main concerns I had really were around where I was going to go study, I suppose. I think it's a tricky one as a particular subject because it's quite it's sort of vocational, but you're aiming towards quite a specific career path. There's quite a well trodden, understood route of becoming an architect. You do 2 degrees and a postgraduate diploma, so you have, and that's spread out over a minimum of 7 years. It takes most people a decade in that sort of region. So it's not a small undertaking, but at the same time, it's a very well structured undertaking. So there's not, you haven't quite, you can see a lot of people following you're following a part in the footsteps of many, many other people. So that was less of a concern, but I would say with hindsight, I do wonder whether I would have taken a different route through it, perhaps, or taken a different route to where I've ended up. Because I think as I say, I now work with a lot of people who've ended up working in the same areas from very different backgrounds, different university choices and different courses. But yeah, it was mostly about where to go. And the big issue for me at the time was I very much wanted to go to UCL in London, but I think I'm not from a hugely wealthy background. It's not, and even back then in sort of 2002, that was quite an undertaking. So it's so there was a kind of, you need a certain amount of confidence to make these big decisions at that point. It can feel, going a relatively long way from home to a very expensive city can be quite a big decision to make. Yeah.
So I'm hearing confidence there. You voiced that word, but also there was an element of determination, how big or small. But you stuck it out. So good on you. Yeah, that's good because it's got you to where you are now. Okay. So when we talked about, as a natural progression from that, if you could just turn our attentions to job applications now, because that's obviously a concern, an understandable concern for people about to enter the labour market. So what's your experiences of, first of all, your first job application, then any subsequent ones, and any gems that you can share with us?
So there's a couple of bits, I suppose. I mean, my own in the design fields where I work, there's a heavy emphasis placed on portfolio. So when you make a job application, you tend to send samples of your work or your design work or with your CV. So that might be sort of 3, 4, 5 pages. And then at interview, you present a portfolio of your work. Now that's quite common in quite a lot of design fields. So there are a few bits with that. I now get job applications coming through. People sending their CVs and what have you. We've had quite a lot this year, and it varies a little bit. There's clearly a kind of there's a trend in the way people are being told to do their CVs at university and the like at the moment, right? So we're getting a lot of diagrams, a lot of sort of pie charts showing how good you are at different things and goodness knows what else. And I'm sort of split on it. I think it's quite good because it is quite clear and quick to read, but it's also becoming a bit of a cliche of itself. But it's good that it kind of covers that off quite well. I think the key thing that I think we've recently been working with someone who sort of made in a way a less formal approach as well as a more formal approach. So I think they sent us an email and a CV or what have you, but I think they also just dropped us a call or almost knocked on the door. And there's somebody who's moved to London from Manchester recently, does similar things to us and lived right around the corner from where our studio is. And it was you know, the sort of convenience of everything made a lot of sense. And I think if you're able to actually go and speak to someone or approach someone or knock on the door somewhere, I think there's a lot to be said for that, because you remember who that person is and a lot more easily than if you've got a bank of CVs coming through. That said, if you're applying for a job in a different country or something, it's not as easy as all that. But that is a very recent experience. I think, that particular person, the fact that he was a human in our consciousness so quickly meant that he was the obvious person to call up when we had too much to do recently.
Okay. Yeah. So again, what I'm kind of hearing from there for the year 10s, year 12s is don't be afraid to make contact, whether it is, if it's convenient and possible, to go and literally knock the door, or contact them by email, phone, but do try and engage with it with prospective companies.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if you reach out to a company and say, tell them you're interested in what they do in quite a specific way, and try to make, say, to highlight why you've contacted them or why you'd like to learn from them or why you'd like to go be employed by them, whatever it happens to be, that's more, that's going to get attention before clicking on the PDF and the email, I think, right? It's and if you can get hold of just one person to pay attention for a few moments. The phone calls are always a bit harrowing when someone calls you up asking for a job, but it means you do have a conversation with them. So it's there's something for it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks again. Okay, so there's no escaping the fact, when you alluded to the fact you've been in your flat for a while, we're living in tough times. So, excuse me, even if pre sort of COVID and hopefully post COVID, joining the labour market at any time is challenging. So what would you say to people right now who are in this kind of COVID bubble, this pandemic, who are thinking about career choices?
I think especially if you're going to university, I wouldn't worry about it too much, because I think the world will get back to normal at some point, right? I don't think we should be too paranoid about. We should have confidence that we'll all get back to living in more sort of conventional manner sooner or later. I do think that aiming for, if this became a pattern, right? If this continued to be an issue in the future, making sure that we've got skills that allow us to work in jobs where we can work remotely when necessary. And I think that the sort of shift where there will be more people working from home, I think in general, my company's got a design studio and a workshop, and it's quite hands-on and on a location, but I happen to live an hour's travel from my workshop. So I think I'll continue this working from home, a couple of days a week anyway, because it's quite nice to be able to do that. So I think that's going to become part of what we do. But whether that means you should target jobs or careers, whether that means that there's going to be the harder hit jobs are the ones where you've definitely got to go somewhere, right? So if we're predicting a future of rolling pandemics, then working in professional industries where you can work remotely, that's a bit doom and gloom, I think. Kind of.
Not quite what I was aiming for, but no, it's okay because it's realistic. It's fine. But for me, I think that probably one of the most important things you said there, that's not to dismiss the other stuff, is, we will pull through this. The world has pulled through various things in the past. Big shifts, whether they be wars, economic crashes, etc. So it's about the here and now. It's about just getting on with it. Okay. So you also hinted at something else there, which we've spoken about, and that's transferable skills. So for me, it's a really important thing to try, a message to try and get to anybody applying for a job, let alone a school leaver entering the jobs market. So can you give us your kind of pearls of wisdom about transferable skills, please?
Yes, I mean, so if I go back to say the architecture school educations, because it's where I have most experience of, say, of university level education. There's a lot of different types of architecture course around the country, right? Some of them are very sort of technical, very vocational. Some of them are much more sort of arts based, a bit more like a giant art college type feel. And I think, particularly at the sort of art college end of this, you find that a very large proportion of the students don't go on to become architects. They spin off in hundreds of different directions, because although they've been taught in design practices around designing hypothetical buildings at university, the process of being a designer is quite transferable, and they might go off to work in a wide range of fields, whether it be designing other things or actually not designing other things. It might be you do a lot of standing up and presenting yourself and all these other things as part of the course. So I think the tendency towards, so even in like architecture, which is in many ways a vocational undertaking, you've actually got a quite a broad basis of what you go on to do. If you look at, say, careers in I don't know, you look if you go, say, going to work, we used to be going to work in the city or somewhere, and now it might be going to work for one of the tech giants or one of the other sort of tech orientated companies. They're not necessarily hiring people who've studied to be computer programmers or anything relevant, and they never have done. They've always just gone out to hire people who are very clever or have achieved well, who have got the possibility to go and work for them and learn, retrain on the job to do something else. Like, so in most cases, people are either looking to, if you've studied economics or something, you're not really trained to do anything, but you've learned a whole wealth of information, which makes you an interesting person applicable to a whole world of potential jobs if you can then go out and put yourself in a position to get them. So I think it's always been a little bit of a, I think it's always been much more transferable than people realize in many ways, because so many people out there study things which aren't vocational. I mean, very few courses are actually vocational when you work back from it.
So again, there's a couple of things coming out there. One, it struck me, I didn't invent this phrase, but basically, if the candidate has the attitude, then the company can give them the aptitude. So we can train you on the job. So yeah. Hopefully that should ease people's concerns about when they look at job applications, thinking, oh, I'm not sure I can do that. Now, I would suggest that sometimes job applications aren't very well written, in the sense that they don't explicitly say, don't worry about this, we'll train you. But interesting enough, Orsted understand that, people in front of them, they don't have to have all the answers, or they don't have to have the answers. We will, if you've got the skills that we need, or you demonstrate the potential, and part of that is lifelong learning, I believe. So, you're prepared to go to a company and bring what you got to the party, and they will then train you in their specialisms. Lovely. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before I ask you, sorry, we're nearly coming to an end now. So before I ask you about a final message you'd give to the Year 10s, is there anything else you'd like to share with the people leaving school?
I think given the circumstances that we're on, so I do some admissions interviews at the Barnet Architecture School, and I've done and I currently teach years 2 and 3, and my niece has just gone to university in Manchester and is one of the students putting messages in the windows. So I think I can see enough people still having a good time. There's still a good sense of camaraderie amongst the students who I engage with, and I think it'll be all right. I think that's my general gist. Also, I think the other thing that I would very much stress is that in this time of anxiety and paranoia about everything that's changing in the world for good or for bad, every time I engage with people who are around university age, I feel much better about everything because they've all got their heads screwed on and they've got a plan for everything much better than any of us lot have. So I would, I'd sort of trust yourselves and enjoy getting on with it. It'll all work itself out.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. I mean, that actually is a great message to end on. So apart from thanking you very much, just to I suppose not reassure you so much, but just to let you know, before anything goes anywhere, I'll send you a copy of this, and I won't do anything with it until I get your explicit permission.
No problems.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. No worries.